So today our article is work related, but talking about job titles and why maybe these kind of new, strange job titles that are appearing everywhere might not be so good, might not be so useful. Sometimes maybe it seems like these new job titles may describe what we do a little bit better, but maybe they could also cause a little bit of confusion as well, or other kinds of problems because people aren't so used to them. So this is what the article is talking about today, and I thought maybe even for Thursday. Maybe part of what we can talk about is kind of inventing some new job titles. So I thought it might be fun to actually come up with some other kind of job titles for different jobs and see if, maybe we can invent one and then everybody else has to guess what exactly the job is. So let's see though, we can worry about that on Thursday, I guess. For today, let's just have a read of the article and let's see what they say. So, to go first, Fatima, would you like to start today?
Yes, thank you, Natasha. What's the problem with inventing flashy new job titles? Employees' roles and seniority have generally been defined with the straightforward terms, but now a new, even somewhat arbitrary, titles are emerging as work changes. What's the harm? Chief Executive Officer, Marketing Director, Lead Writer, Sales Associate. Job titles like this have generally been standard across work for years. They are succinct and clear, communicating essential employee details such as job function and seniority. They make sense to employees, to recruit and recruiters alike, leaving little room for ambiguity. However, job titles are yet another feature evolving in the changing world of work. Labels like Chief Visionary Officer, Chief Innovation Evangelist, Business Development Guru, or Chief Remote Officer are emerging, making the traditional system seem too rigid and perhaps even stale. On the surface, there may seem little harm in altering what an employee is called or creating new titles entirely. After all, as work becomes more flexible, job functions and the way we describe them are changing too. In many ways, these new titles reflect the evolving times. They are empowering some employees to discover new talents or feel a heightened sense of belonging. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this part here. Questions, comments? Okay, succinct. What does succinct mean? I am not very good about being succinct. I have a problem with this. I have to fight with myself all the time to do it. Even right now, I'm not being succinct. Exactly. Brief, short, quickly pronounced, quickly stated. When we say that something is succinct, it means that something is very brief, short, but still well clearly expressed. Okay. So it's short but clear. Concise, exactly. Concise, to the point, and clear. Okay. I'm trying to be succinct now by not expanding on this more. I'm fighting with myself in my brain right now to not give any more other any other examples. The first part of it, it's got that I guess like success. It doesn't have to be quite a k kind of sound, like a hard k though. It can be kind of like going towards more of an S sound, so like succinct. So because succinct, inked doesn't really flow very well. So succinct, it's kind of that k, but it's a soft k sound, closer to an S. Spot on. We probably wouldn't use spot on so much, because spot on is more when you're very accurate about something. So when you're very accurate about like a solution for something, but some like to the point would be a better translation than spot on. Exactly. I don't want you guys to be so succinct. I want you to be doing lots of practice, but I have to be succinct so that you guys don't have to be. Okay. Any other questions here? Okay. Let's keep reading then. Let's see who is up next. Manu, would you like to read?
Yes, thank you, Natasha. Yes, there is a reason why traditional job titles have endured for so long, and why loosening the rules around them to create arbitrary titles may not always be the best approach. Clear and rigid. Job titles serve many purposes. In general, they are clear and indicative of the employee's seniority and responsibilities. For example, it's largely accepted that assistants are below associates, who are below directors, who are below vice presidents, who are below CEOs. Clear-cut titles signal a hierarchy and responsibility, and illuminate a path to earning status and promotion. They are also our workers look for appropriate roles when they are job hunting, and what recruiters hinge their searches on. While most industries have traditionally had some iteration of these status indicators, this is especially the case in hierarchical industries where an employee's title matches the rank in an organization across companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this part here. Questions, comments? Any questions here? Okay, iteration. Iteration is kind of about repetition, but it's not exactly the same. An iteration can be a repetition of something, but it could also be like a new version of something. So it might be repeating something, but repeating it in a slightly different way or in like a newer version of it, if that makes sense. Here, where they've used it here, okay. So they said, while most industries have traditionally had some iteration of these status indicators. So the idea is that you're kind of repeating them, although they might not be exactly the same. They're kind of very, very similar though. They might just be like a slightly updated version, but it's still the same thing. Does that make sense? In this, they'd be talking about the equivalent of something, but it might be the equivalent, maybe using a little bit, there might be a little small modification there. It's probably not a huge modification like the changes they're talking about in the article. Okay. Any other questions here? Some of these, when I talk about the modifications as well, some of them might just be to make them more up to date. For example, if you think about something like technology jobs or marketing jobs, a lot of things have changed in those areas. So, you know, the jobs have kind of, the titles have changed a little bit to reflect like the technology as well that's being used. So it's technically the same job, it's the same kind of level, the same role, but I had to update the titles a little bit just to reflect the new technology or the technology that people are using now, which is a little bit different from the past. Okay. It looks like there's no other questions here, so let's keep reading. Constantine, would you like to read?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The legal field is a key example. Traditionally, career progression in law is from trainee solicitor to associate, salaried partner, and then equity partner in most firms, explained Ruston Tata, partner and chairman of London-based DMH Stellart. It conveys relative seniority within a particular firm's view as to the employee's experience and development. While many law firms have added new layers to their organizational structure in recent years through senior associate, managing associate, and paralegal at data, the language of job titles and where they rank in a company remains clear and understood across the industry. However, although job titles may be fairly entrenched in industries like law and finance, they are evolving in many other industries, especially creative ones. In less rigid settings, employers have nearly free rein to create job titles for employees, whether new or newly promoted. These new titles can serve as recruitment or retention tools and even grab attention from clients. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this part. Questions, comments? Creative job titles to prevent ghosting. Yeah, I feel like sometimes these creative job titles as well might be used so that you like feel you're getting a promotion or some kind of reward for something, even though maybe nothing really changes. Even with the ones that we're talking about here with the lawyers, right? You know, I feel like associate to senior associate, it's maybe just a way for you to feel like you're moving up, even though you haven't really, nothing's really changed. You're still kind of in the same position that you were before. So I think there's some very creative things done with some of these job titles. Paralegal, yeah, paralegal is a pretty common job title to use. Where do you think paralegal would fit in this, like in the hierarchy? Where do you think paralegal would come, you know, in that list of job titles that were related to law? Oh, no, definitely below the CEO, but everybody is below the CEO. So where? Are they in the middle somewhere? What would they be between? Any ideas? Yep, they're like an assistant. So if we are looking at this list that started from trainee solicitor, a paralegal would actually go before the trainee solicitor, I believe. Usually a paralegal has some kind of legal training, but they're not actually fully qualified as a lawyer. So, for example, somebody who is still completing their law degree, or maybe somebody who's completed a certificate or a kind of traineeship, something like this, a legal traineeship, they could work as a paralegal, but they're not technically a lawyer. They don't have the qualifications to be an actual lawyer. So like Fatima said, a lot of the times paralegals kind of act as assistants for the other lawyers. So they maybe do part of the process, which is then checked and revised and finished by someone who's qualified. There's a lot of typing here. Yeah, Manu, this is a really good example. And this is what I thought we could have some fun with for on Thursday as well. So like the waiter in a fast food restaurant could be turned into a customer meal satisfaction manager. Being a customer meal satisfaction manager sounds a lot fancier than just being a waiter, right? This definitely is one of the ways that they're using these new terms. Fatima, what do you mean by titles? Are you talking about paralegals? By titles, do you mean like certificates or like qualifications? Okay, certificates. Yes, usually they do have some kind of certificate. Paralegals do have some kind of legal training. So they do have usually some kind of certificate, some kind of qualification in law, but then they don't have like enough qualifications to be considered a lawyer. They probably haven't passed like the bar exam or done some of that other training or those other exams that they need to do to be like a fully qualified lawyer. So yeah, usually they have to have some kind of legal training to be able to work as a paralegal. Okay. Any other questions or comments here before we keep going? Yeah, I think paralegal, we do hear quite a lot. I think as a character for books, it makes a very interesting character. And I think poor paralegals sometimes have to do a lot of the work of lawyers without maybe the recognition of them. So I think they make interesting characters for books as well. Okay. Let's keep going. Let's keep reading. So, Fatima, would you like to read again?
Yes, thank you, Natasha. This was the case for Lenny Hughes, whose official job title is Head of Hype and Culture at Derwent, a London-based creative advertising agency. This was not initially the title for which the company was recruiting. The position was officially advertised as a more traditional head of marketing and new business. But says Hughes as he interviewed, what shined through was his strong people skills and natural culture fit, rather than traditional marketing experience. Hughes worked with Troyan to craft a new title for the role he had led, centered more on blending traditional external branding and communications with a fresh take on internal workplace culture. His daily tasks including creative live events, podcasts, and apparel lines alongside typical public relations duties like managing social media accounts and press releases. While marketing and sorry.
Oh, sorry, that was my fault. I left it a little bit late. Let's take a look at this part though. Questions, comments? No questions. Looks like I chose an easier article for today. Okay, strong people skills. What are we usually talking about when we talk about people skills? What kind of skills do you think might be included in people skills? Konstantin?
I recently have known some position. It's maybe widely spread in IT industry, and the position title is people partner. So it's something. It's maybe some psychologist who make support to newbies, to people into the company, and maybe it's about some psychological support. So it's maybe people mean to contact with people and communicate with people or something like that. Thank you.
Yeah, usually when we talk about people skills, what we're talking about is the skills that you need to effectively deal with people. So things like communication skills, problem solving skills, empathy, understanding. Some of those more like soft skills that we talk about that are really the skills that you need to maybe like manage people and to work closely with people. Yeah, these are usually the ones that we talk about when we talk about like people skills. So it's not that you're good with numbers or particular tasks, but it's about how you work with other people. Yeah, that emotional intelligence, that's the term I was thinking of. So if you have strong people skills, it means that you're very good with this. You work very well with other people. You know, you can work very effectively with other people. Okay. Any other questions in this part? Sometimes we joke around and we can say that people are very good at their job, but they don't have very good people skills. And usually that means that they're a very difficult person to work with, even though they do their job very well. So you can think about people skills in that kind of way as well, how well you can kind of work with other people. Okay, let's keep reading. Manu, would you like to read again?
Yes, thank you. While marketing and new business are still in Hugh's remit, he says the new title suits him better. He feels it's innovative. He also acknowledges it's not without a strategic benefit. If my job is all about getting attention, then the title should do that too. A PR move. Experts and employees alike say there can be an upside to flashy, even somewhat arbitrary job titles. In one sense, explain Power Adrian, director of EMEA economic research at the hiring platform Indeed, based in London. Altered job titles can help make an employee feel more valued at a company. He cites Indeed the data seen by BBC Work Life, showing people it is outstripping the traditional title of human resources. Similarly, the standard title of talent acquisition is up 75%, while recruitment is down 19% since 2019. Similarly, language like client success and customer success in job titles is replacing sales. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this part here. Any questions or comments in this part here? Okay, remit. What do you think remit means? He said here, well, marketing and new business are still in Hughes's remit. from the context, what do you think it might mean? You might be able to take a guess here from the context. Yep, duties, tasks. Usually a remit is either a task or like an area that is kind of in your responsibility that you're supposed to take care of. So task or duties, I think, is another good word. And we probably would use this more. Sometimes we also talk about area of responsibility, or I'm trying to think of other terms they use in like job ads. Scope as well. So sometimes they talk about the scope of your job. That's very similar to like the remit of your job. It's like which areas you are in charge of or you're responsible for. Yeah. Okay, great. Any other questions here? Okay, outstripping. What do you think they mean here by outstripping? They show that people is outstripping the traditional title of human resources. Again, any ideas based on what they're talking about in the next part of this sentence as well when they make some other comparisons? Not getting rid of something, no. For example, you can outstrip someone in a race. It's not about avoiding either. Exceed, yeah. So outstripping is this idea that you're kind of going faster or going beyond or being bigger than something else. So when they say that one term is outstripping the other, it means that one term is being used much more than the other term is being used. Yep, overpass would be, or actually just pass or overtake would be another word that you could use here instead of outstrip. Or even surpass. Surpass would work here as well. Is that sentence clear for everyone now? Yep. Okay. Are there any other questions in this part here? A talent acquisition person sounds much fancier than a recruitment person, right? You feel a lot more special if it's a talent acquisition. And this is probably exactly why they've started using these terms as well. Okay, anything else before we keep reading? Constantine, any other questions? Okay, would you like to read again?
Yes, sure. Human resources can sound bureaucratic, says Adrian. By instead using people in title, employers can say they invest in people. Through this language, companies are trying to show they value individuals as customers and partners rather than resources to exploit. They can also be exciting for employees who feel empowered by bespoke, newly minted titles. It massively boosts your confidence, says Hughes. They are putting faith in your skill set, saying they'll do everything in their power to create an environment in which you can thrive and develop. He adds that because many job paths are no longer linear, traditional titles can feel restrictive. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at this part here. Questions, comments? One thing here about the pronunciation as well. This word here is actually minted. Maybe this is a good one for me to ask you all about as well. If we talk about something being newly minted, what is it? I think that is a very, very good point, Manu. Wages must match these flashy new titles. I agree 100%. And unfortunately, sometimes you get the flashy new title, but not the money that comes with it, or that should come with it. So I 100% agree with you. Okay. So tell me about this phrase, newly minted. What does it mean if something is newly minted? Newly created. Yes, exactly. This idea, minted, comes from coins, producing new coins. Not so much conceived, it's more about created or produced, because we usually use it more, I was about to say with physical things, but that doesn't work in this situation, does it? In this case, it's like the name of something, but it was something that was created or produced. Newly coined, yeah. Newly minted is very similar to newly coined. The idea is these two phrases are really, really close to each other. So that's probably the best way to think about it and the best way to remember it. Okay. What about the rest of this part? Are there any other questions? Okay, bespoke. What does bespoke mean? Konstantin?
I face it with this word, then we use something, for example, bespoke solution. It is something that exists only in one exemplar, so it is only one, and no one similar exists. So it's about something unique. Thank you.
Exactly. Bespoke usually means that it's been made specifically for a specific person. So the way we use it a lot, we talk about like bespoke suits, for example. So it's a suit that's been made specifically just for you, for your exact measurements. You know, it hasn't been made for anyone else. So whenever we use bespoke, it's got this idea that it's something that has been made or developed or created specifically for one person. Yeah, it's definitely not a new word. We used to use it a lot in the past, like in the 1800s. Now it's not so common, just because it's not so common to have these kind of like bespoke items. Not just tailored, because tailored still has the idea that, you know, you've got maybe like a product or something and then you change it a little bit to make it suit you. Bespoke is like from start to finish, made specifically for you. But it's very similar to the idea of tailored. And to be honest, we probably use tailored to have this meaning a little bit more than we would use bespoke. Bespoke, we're starting to maybe use it a little bit more, but not as much as we used to. To be honest, probably what we use more than anything nowadays is custom made. Custom made is probably the term that we would use more than bespoke nowadays. When I see people use bespoke nowadays, I feel like it's used for maybe more expensive products. So it's used to give a sense of something that's maybe more high-end, very high quality and very high price. So custom made feels like a little bit more accessible. Yeah, bespoke is a little bit more exclusive. So maybe that's why it's starting to come back a little bit. People are using it for like more exclusive custom made things. Okay. Any other questions before we keep going? No? Okay. Let's keep reading then. Fatma, would you like to read again?
Thank you. Thank you, Natasha. From the recruiter's standpoint, they can help lure workers by signaling a progressive, even fun culture. These vague but flashy titles can also help companies tap a broad candidate pool. This may be especially useful in a tight job market, says Adarjan. When hiring is so competitive, employers have to do more to stand out from the crowd, from offering pay, benefits, or even job titles. It's, as Hughes points out, a PR move. However, the downsides of new monikers can be significant too. First, they can sometimes be fluffy and meaningless, leaving workers with a grandiose title, but little guidance as to what their job actually entails. As opposed to barista or HGV driver, team member has become popular as a branding exercise, says Adarjan. It suggests the candidate will be a valued member of the business, but it conveys no information as to the occupation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at this part. Questions, comments? You figured it out, Manu. The flashy title is making up for the poor wages. Unfortunately, I think you might be right in some cases. Maybe not in everything, but in some cases, it can help maybe. Yeah, it's about luring people in. I also feel like sometimes if they're a little bit vague, and it's not quite clear what exactly you do, then when you start working, they can maybe give you other tasks to do that you didn't realize that you would have to do, and kind of convince you that, that they fall under whatever your new fancy title is. So I feel like it's a good way about being able to include other kinds of tasks into your job that maybe wouldn't normally have been in it if it was more of a traditional job title. Yeah. I've seen other titles actually for baristas. For example, beverage specialist, or what was the other title that I saw? It was something about art. Maybe like drink art specialist, or drink artist, or something like that, or coffee artist maybe. Yeah, this is why I thought it'd be an interesting exercise maybe on Thursday. Maybe we can choose some of these more like traditional job titles, and maybe we can come up with some new some new titles for them. Yeah, chief coffee supplier, coffee conjuring artist. See, we can think of a lot of great titles for it. I think it'd be an interesting senior coffee artist. Yeah, the senior is important here. You're not a junior coffee artist. You've been doing it for a while now. You're experienced. Okay. Any other questions in this part here? I think we've got a little bit left to go. And I think we should be able to finish today, maybe. Oh, fluffy. Okay. Here they talked about that these titles can sometimes be fluffy and meaningless. What do you think they mean here by fluffy? Or maybe using fluffy here in a way that we wouldn't normally use fluffy. We use, yeah, with little substance. Exactly. So sometimes we talk about movies being fluffy or books being fluffy. It's this idea that it's not something really serious. It's something that's a little bit silly, a little bit frivolous. It's not so important. Okay. It doesn't have a lot of meaning in it or a lot of importance in it. It doesn't have a lot of depth in the name. It's just very light and fun and vague and maybe a little bit silly. Yeah, fluffy hair would be a little bit different because now we're talking more about the texture. Okay, so when we talk about fluffy, we can use it to describe the texture of something, like a fluffy cake or a fluffy animal. But we can use it in another way, in a more informal way, to talk about like something that doesn't have a lot of substance to it. Okay. Any other questions here before we keep going? Okay, let's keep reading then. Manu, would you like to read again?
Yes, thank you. And ultimately, when a non-descriptive inflated job title is used as a costless recruiting tactic to boost worker ego, this ambiguity can lead to a mismatch in expectations between employers and employee. At the extreme end, this could lead to jobs being oversold, placing workers in a tough position where they end up in a role that doesn't match what they thought was promised. And familiar titles may also hinder workers when they eventually look for new jobs. Adrian points out that accurate descriptive titles with simple and specific language help job seekers find vacancies that are actually right for them. Rebranding jobs can go too far, he says. If the titles become too generic and vague, job seekers may have a difficult time trying to match their employment experience to available roles. Uh, Recruiters, too, may not be able to identify the right candidates for new roles with job titles that are, in effect, meaningless outside an organization. It can also put candidates on the back foot if hiring managers to reach them. Having an extremely uncommon word in a title may mean a worker finds it hard to explain their job to recruiters. Says Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this part. Questions, comments? Constantine?
I would like to add a comment, and we have to take it into account. Then people looking for job, they look not only on the title, but only to description of profession and to the supposed responsibilities. So maybe the title is not primarily thing then you choose your job. So maybe it is affect and have some impact, but the significance of this how it relate with success in your job seeking, maybe it may be a little bit overestimated. Thank you.
Maybe to some degree. Although I think it's hard sometimes because normally when you're looking for a job, what do? You have to search, right? So if you go to a job site, normally you don't read, the title and the description for every single job, right? Normally you do a search for some kind of keyword and then you look at the jobs that appear. So if let's say if you use the search, barista, but they're not advertising it as a barista. You're a coffee artist or a caffeine supplier or something like this. If they haven't used the word barista in the job ad, there might be a job that is that job that's being advertised, but it's not going to appear for you because that word wasn't actually used in the job ad. So yes, I think looking at the response, like the tasks that are there are important, but you have to be able to find the job as well first. And maybe if it's missing some of those key terms that you would search for, it might be harder to actually find those jobs. Maybe that was a bad example because obviously there are a lot of other words that you could use that were maybe more general that you could kind of guarantee. But maybe in a different area, like a customer service area or something else, it might be a little bit more difficult. Yeah, maybe that's a problem as well, that it could be harder kind of explaining to other people what your job is. Maybe that's one of the downsides of it. Maybe your job is very similar to other jobs that you've done with a much simpler description, and you have to spend a lot of time maybe explaining to other people what exactly you do. Are there any questions in this part? Okay. Well, I would recommend, I think we almost got to finish. There's a little bit about here at the end about how it could be maybe difficult for recruiters because they may not understand, for example, on a resume, what certain positions are if certain terms aren't being used. So that could make things a little bit more complicated, especially if they're using these kind of key terms. If it's a computer that's maybe doing this filtering, if it doesn't have some of those key terms, maybe some resumes could kind of be skipped over by those automatic filtering systems. Yeah. So the last bit of it kind of talks a little bit about that, and also the idea that this is probably going to continue, that whether we like it or not, probably these new job titles are going to continue to be invented in different companies. So let's talk about this more on Thursday. Maybe have a bit of a think about it. Maybe try to think of some different job titles, kind of like common job titles, and think about how you would maybe recreate that job title in a more creative way. So think about another term you could use, another title you could use for that person's job. And maybe we'll do a little bit of a guessing game. So maybe we can, somebody can give a job title and everybody else has to guess what exactly that person does as part of their job. Could be interesting. Some of them might be more obvious than others, of course. Thank you, Manu. That was a good reminder for me as well. But I think that could be maybe interesting for us to do on Thursday. And of course, just talk about it like we normally do. So